Welcome to Life Today. I'm James Robison. Betty and I appreciate the opportunity of sharing with you. Now just hang on a second in case you just started surfing. Don't do it, because marriages, relationships could depend on what you're going to hear, and that's being able to clearly communicate. Our guest today is really just released a book that is just destined to be a bestseller because it has such a profound effect on people's relationships. It's called Cracking the Communication Code. Betty's heard me say over and over, I don't think there's anything more important in life than clear communication. You can't stand to get static on your cell phone. I believe I could be as wealthy as Bill Gates if I could guarantee that nobody'd ever drop a call again and then put the device in the phone. There's no question about it. We don't like to have our communication short-circuited in the middle of a sentence, and yet people live together and they never really get a sentence through where the other person understands what they're saying. Now what Emerson Eggerichs is saying is that we have a code problem. We're not even speaking the same language, man and woman, male and female. We're not speaking the same language. We don't understand each other. And he's going to try to help us get out of this cycle. He wrote a book called Love and Respect in a program. We just had him on in that program yesterday. And we were talking about love and respect, how much men want this respect, how much women need this unconditional love, and God commands us to give it to one another. Give that to one another, not give it to one another. That's the problem we've got in communication. Now, he talked about the crazy cycles that keep us from dealing with this. But now we're going to talk about energy and reward and some cycles, some things that happen. This man, really focus on the family, is continually promoting what he's doing in conferences. We'll tell you how you go to one, but you can get the book, and I'm encouraging you to do it. I want you to welcome the author of the book, Cracking the Communication Code, Emerson Eggerichs, to Life Today again. Emerson's good to see you again. Really good to see you.
Yes.
Now, you talked about, and let me read the chapter titles, because we did deal with this, I think, I felt like in a brief period of time effectively, but you can't cover it like it needs to. That's why you wrote the book. That's why you have these seminars. A lot of you can't travel to the seminar, so he's sending it to you, literally. And this is really well written. All right. He gives you a short course on what was a major book that was a bestseller, Love and Respect, Critically Important Relationship. Part 2 in this book, 3 Vital Truths for Better Communication. In marriage, as an example, the mouth matters. Not wrong, just different. That's the issue. We're different. All right, then he talked about the crazy cycle. You know, how you stop it. Who's to blame? Who started it? She didn't respect me, so I don't express love. I didn't express love, so now she didn't respect me. Where does it start? Well, he deals with that very effectively. Go online and watch yesterday's program if you want to see what we said and shared there. All right, now, lifetoday.org if you want to find it. Now here, the energizing cycle. This is what we're going to talk about today. At least that's what you told me, right? All right, I'm trying to cover these chapter titles because we don't have enough time to cover it all. The unconditional dimension of communication is the rewarded cycle. All right, take off, Doc. Tell us what we need to know about communication.
Well, one of the points you made about male and female, in effect, I say she speaks in pink, he speaks in blue. And one of the challenges with couples is that we believe if we're saying things as clearly as we think, you know, why doesn't the other person get it? But if Betty speaks Chinese and I speak English, she can speak perfect Chinese to me. But if I don't know Chinese, then the only thing she can really do is what we do often when we're speaking to someone who doesn't speak our language. We start getting louder. And have you ever tried to get instructions from someone who, I need to go to the grocery store?
Yeah.
You know, and they don't know.
In a foreign country, it's hilarious to hear Americans try to speak Spanish, you know.
Yes.
Loud in Mexico.
That's right, exactly. So that's a tendency. When we don't speak the other's language, we end up getting louder. And my point is, Jesus asked this question in Matthew 19, have you not read, He who made them from the beginning, made them male and female? And many of us have not read that, apparently. It's a reference back to Genesis, and it is important for us to see that. And I believe that God created Betty to look at the world through pink sunglasses. She has pink hearing aids, and she speaks through a pink megaphone. James, on the other hand, has blue sunglasses, blue hearing aids, and speaks through a blue megaphone. And we aren't wrong. We're just different, any more than pink is wrong for not being blue or blue is wrong for not being pink. We don't make that kind of judgment against colors.
You know, isn't it amazing how this attempt to make everybody in our image rather than God's? And I think really to try to get out of who He made us is that attempt to make us all the same. If you look at communist countries, they all built all the houses like blocks. It's just sameness because they're imposing it. And we try to make each other like one another. And churches do this, and they all look like they came out of a cookie cutter, and really it's almost, it's repulsive. And I think that's what happens when we try to shape each other. We find ourselves being repulsed, don't we?
That's right. Well, in marriage, what we find is, you know, if you were just a little bit more like me, we would be happy.
But what happens, because when we fall in love and we get married and we know those differences are there, but boy, we feel like I can work around that. I can live around it. But when we start living together, we want to change one another.
That's right, because we get on what we call that crazy cycle. Based on Ephesians 5:33, husbands must love, wives must respect. When she feels unloved, she reacts in disrespectful ways. She doesn't intend to. She's actually seeking your love. When you feel disrespected, you react in unloving ways you don't intend to. And it's this misunderstanding that I believe results in this kind of tension. We don't understand or listen carefully to that deeper cry. But coming back then to what Jesus said, male and female, and coming to this simple illustration, for instance, a wife says, I have nothing new, right? You know, I have nothing new. I have nothing to wear, I should say, and she's saying, I have nothing to, to wear, but what she means is she has nothing new.
I see.
Right? Okay. You say you have nothing.
That sounds real clear to me.
Yeah. And he says,
but you know what? She'll go.
But here's what you say. Let me just interrupt. You say I have nothing to wear, but what you mean is you have nothing clean.
That's it.
You see? But here it is. But the same. Now here's what's so powerful. The same words. I have nothing to wear. I have nothing to wear. Same words. She says I have nothing to wear, but it's different. And here's an illustration of pink and blue, and that's an innocent illustration. But then you get into these tensions. We have to come to the point.
You've been sneaking around my house.
Well, I live there, and you live there. We all live there. God made us this way. So the question now is, okay, how do you motivate your spouse to soften? How do we influence our spouse? We try to change them to be like us, but the Lord is saying, look, the key to motivating another person is meeting that person's deepest need. And when I meet Sarah's deepest need for love, or when I come across more lovingly, or when I say to her, I'm sorry, I was unloving, will you forgive me? Her spirit softens. Why? Because I'm speaking her mother tongue. I'm getting through to her. I'm speaking her language. When Sarah says to me...
May I interrupt just say, it appears to me that Betty likes me not to be broken hurt, but to be broken because I hurt. In other words, because I hurt somebody. She likes to see this brokenness on my part. That evidently comes across as unconditional love when I'm saying I realize I was wrong.
Yes.
That seems to move her.
Oh, huge. I mean, in a woman's world, saying, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? It is so energizing, so overwhelming. It's just a powerful thing. Same thing on the other side. When a wife comes to her husband and says, you know what, I was really disrespectful. I really dishonored you. I am wrong for that. Will you forgive me? Every male I know who has any degree of goodwill softens. Why? She's speaking our mother tongue. And so coming back to this original point, we say that communication is the key to marriage. I don't believe that's accurate. I believe mutual understanding is the key. If there's mutual understanding, you speak a little bit of her mother tongue, she speaks a little bit of yours. If you voice things, I came across unlovingly, or you say I came across disrespectfully, I say to couples, just try that and watch what happens. You begin to speak their mother tongue. Every woman I know realizes if her husband said, I'm sorry for being unloving, she'll soften. She's hearing that. And when you say to your husband, you know what, I dishonored you, even if he was more unloving, don't go to his 90% guilt, go to your 10% wrongdoing, say, I disrespected you. And doing so, why? Because Christ commands me to be loving. Ultimately, I do this because the Lord is saying, Emerson, the bottom line, son, is you disobeyed me. I command you to love Sarah whether she's lovable or not. And so you go back and seek her forgiveness, because ultimately this is a temperature gauge here on your relationship with me. And I know in Sarah's case, she'll come and seek my forgiveness for having been disrespectful, even though I know I'm more guilty. But she's told me many times, I do this because of my love for Christ. Christ is telling me to do this because I disobeyed him. And that's the rewarded cycle. And when we do that, there's a cha-ching effect in heaven.
So to me, what I hear you saying is when you see that mate coming toward you with that love, maybe you have been the one that's been, quote, the wrong one, but they're still coming toward you, that helps instead of drawing back and separating from one another.
Well,
Yes,
and it's not easy if my spouse is 90% guilty and I'm 10% guilty.
But that's what touches their heart.
Yes, that's exactly what touches the heart. And the question is, well, what will motivate me to do that? And that's why we unpack in a large way the rewarded cycle. At the end of the day, as a follower of Christ, I've got to ask myself, does Christ command me to love Sarah? And does that matter to him? And I say, what matters to Christ matters. And the deepest motivation for me to go back and say to Sarah that I'm unloving, not only because she needs to hear that, but as a follower of Christ, if I've quenched the Holy Spirit, I've grieved the heart of the Lord, I've got to go back and make things right because I want my conscience clear before the Lord. And one of the things we're challenging people with is this, that in heaven, we're not going to be married to one another. The Sadducees tried to trick Jesus with the story of the 7 sons. The first son married this woman, and then he died, and she married the second son, and he died. She married the third, and he died, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh. They all died, and then she died, and the Sadducees said to Jesus, whose wife will she be in the resurrection? And Jesus said, you neither know the Scriptures nor the power of God. You're not given in marriage in heaven, nor will you be married in heaven, but you'll be like angels. What was Jesus saying? That woman won't be married to any one of those 7 men. You'll be like an angel. So here's the point. What's the purpose of marriage for the believing community? Marriage is a tool and a test to deepen and demonstrate our love and our reverence for Jesus Christ. Ultimately, I'm called to love Sarah to demonstrate my love for Christ. And Sarah is called to respect me, not because I deserve it, but out of her reverence for Jesus Christ and His command to her. And there's going to be a cha-ching effect. There's going to come a day when a person does this in obedience, even if a spouse doesn't respond. This isn't necessarily going to result in effectiveness. But one can do this out of love and reverence for Christ, out of trust and obedience toward Christ. And Paul goes on in Ephesians 6 to say, whatever good thing each one does, this he'll receive back from the Lord. That nothing is wasted and everything counts.
Do you agree that it's virtually impossible, maybe you just kind of have a truce and hang in there,
right,
but to have the kind of relationship you're talking about unless you have a relationship with God?
Well, I can say that I believe that biblically, I believe that personally. I would say that there are people and atheists who could have a loving, respectful relationship, and it could be quite meaningful. But I can say in my situation, I need God, because when Sarah shows me disrespect, it's not within my nature to be loving. And Sarah will say that when I am unloving, it's not within her nature to be respectful. We need something supernatural because we don't have it in the natural. And I need Jesus Christ. So in my case, I just simply, Lord, I can't do this apart from you. And that's why He sent the Holy Spirit, the helper. And that's a great descriptor. The helper. Why the helper? Because we need help. And it doesn't mean that we're unmanly. It's not unmanly. As a man of honor, it's not within our nature to respond to a woman who's disrespectful. It's not natural to be loving. So to say, I need Jesus Christ to help me with that is not unmanly at all. And it's not unloving of a woman who says, you know what, it's not natural for me to really be respectful when I feel unloved. No, because you weren't designed by God to be treated that way. So you need Jesus Christ to do this. But ultimately, when we do it, there is a cha-ching effect. He will reward us. We are going to be rewarded for that trust and obedience, and we've got to trust that. A few short years, and then hearing, well done, good and faithful servant.
I think, Emerson, that whatever this accuser of the brethren spirit influence, and if you don't understand there's spiritual influences in the world, and you don't understand the intricacies of life and the value of oxygen, it's just as real as oxygen, as real as sounds in the world and visual influences, the spirit world is doing its best to tear us apart.
Yes.
To get us to feel like she's accusing me. You watch it with brothers and sisters.
Right.
You watch it where he tries to tear us apart. If we are going to make it in communication and break the code and understand reward, we need, as you said, God's help.
Well, and this is a burden I have as a pastor, and I know you have it. Is the Church of Jesus Christ an effective witness with a high divorce rate? Are we bald-headed men selling hair restoration oil? There's a credibility crisis. And the challenge before us is how authentic is our worship? How effective is our evangelism? You know, I could be sharing the love of Christ with my neighbor and just, oh, you know, you need to come to Christ. We need to be reconciled. The peace that Christ gives you. And the phone rings, and it's his wife. What do you want?
There you go.
What are you doing? I don't have time to talk to you. Call me later.
God help
Furthermore,
God
I
help
just want to talk to you about the love of Jesus.
That's right.
You see, the point is there's a
God
tremendous,
help
and I'm a pastor, so the question is, why did God illumine my heart on this marriage topic? I believe that if the marriages, the first institution that He established in Genesis, then the institution of the church is being undermined. And there are many people watching a lot of different religions and they don't believe them. But they're watching Christianity and they're saying, oh, I long for this to be true. But you are so bitter toward one another in your marriages.
That's right.
And so one of the prayers for the intercessors is to begin to pray that God brings revival to the church through the reconciliation of husbands and wives. And I believe the movement of the church will head in a positive direction. That's my prayer and my burden.
Absolutely. Be a model and example. And let me be sure you don't misinterpret something that Emerson just said. That doesn't mean for 1 second that the church is unloving toward those who've had this crisis collision of divorce. It means that we also minister to them in a way that if there is a future union, they then have some building blocks and a foundation to build upon, that they've had some examples to watch.
Well, and my mom and dad divorced one another, and then they remarried one another. I saw my dad attempt to strangle my mother. So I come out of woundedness. So yeah, those comments I made must not be interpreted by the hurting. You are the ones of all people who understand the need for healing, and Christ is the healer. I was healed because of that. I came to Christ because of that. But I'm challenging all of us who know Christ, know the right thing, to hang in there for the sake of the glory of Jesus Christ.
And I don't believe the goal should be to make each other the same, because that's not, we're different. We're
Even
different,
the relationship.
But to appreciate one another's differences, but at the same time, love one another and care about and respect one another enough to learn each other's language.
Yes, and that's why we wrote the books.
And we got to be committed to doing that. I don't know that we've had a guest on who has any better understanding or insight into helping us really crack the communication code. We want to communicate. We just don't speak the same languages. We are different. We make the mistake of trying to shape one another in our image rather than being who we are in Him. And I really encourage you to get the book.